Hello, Howlers. Welcome to this week's episode of Fade to Obsidian, where we will be discussing chapters 66 to 70 of Lightbringer. So please make sure you have read up until this point in the book. Please note that we will be using strong language and drinking strong spirits, and there will definitely be talk of violence and death. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Fade to Obsidian, your podcast about relationships and spaceships in the Red Rising universe. I am Skipper, joined as always by Crescent, and joined again this week by Summit. Welcome back, Summit.
Thank you. Very
Welcome
happy to be
back.
here with you guys.
Yeah, we're so excited that you've joined us, and I believe you actually requested at least the person in this. You wanted Lyria and Cassius, or Lyria and Volga were the two options, and we get a little bit of
Look
both.
at you go. You get them both.
You get them both. Some great chapters. What are you drinking tonight? And it can be just water.
Yes. So and I'm at the point now. I'm pregnant, so I'm not drinking alcohol.
Mini howler coming.
Yes, and there are a few mini howlers in the den coming this way, which is very exciting. But I did at least get my Summon the Howlers Summit mug out, and I am drinking a burnt green tea, mostly because I couldn't find a red tea. So at least I wanted to dabble in the color area.
I like it. All right, Crescent, what do you have?
I have this martini that I made, and it's called the Bleeding Heart Martini.
Oh,
So it's a chunk of beef heart.
There you go.
Wow. It's pickled beet. I'm not that insane.
Nice. I had a few ideas floating around in my head, and then I was like, you know what? I really want to learn to float. It's like my mission of this podcast is how to do like a split alcohol. So like, yeah, it doesn't work for me. It doesn't reach out for advice.
With?
What do you mean? What am I pouring?
The bottle? Like, are you just pouring out of the bottle?
Yeah.
Get pour spouts.
Probably why.
Get pour spouts, because most of them have like an air brake on them that you can plug, and it comes out super slow.
Oh, yeah. Because the thing, it's like, just do it over the back of the spoon. It's like, I tried it over the back of the spoon. So what I was drinking was, what we had to discover was pomegranate. We're on still my pomegranate kick. This will be my last week of pomegranate, I swear. But I have a pomegranate liqueur from Greece. It's all in Greek. We think it's pomegranate, to be fair. And it came out orange because the whole thing, when I put in it didn't work. So anyway, then I added pomegranate juice. So this is just pure pomegranate, but I'm gonna make up for it. So this is, I'm gonna say, representing Lyria today. And then I've got my black glitter, as always. And that can be the passage of the stain. So I'm gonna try and hold this to the camera. Oh no, I'm gonna end up with so much in it because I'm doing it this way. I don't know if you can see it.
Oh yeah.
There it goes. Oh! I also just realized that I think this is the silver and not the black powder. So, it works. Whoops. It's fine.
Just imagine if it was black.
Just imagine if it was black. Maybe later I'll find the black powder. I just had that moment of like, this is the silver. Oh well. But yeah, there you go. More glitter. So there you go. That's my... Because we are doing... So it's 66 to 70 of Lightbringer, which is some juicy chapters and does finally explain the passage of the stained in here. But yeah.
Well, this Trial of the Stains anyway.
This Trial of the Stains. Are they not all the same? This was well, maybe we'll get into it when we get there.
There's something about sneaking into the lair of a drake and eating one of their eggs.
Ooh, I want to do that. No, I don't. I don't want to kill a drake.
Tracks.
I don't want to kill a drake.
No, it's just an egg. Just eat the egg.
But that would.
It's like drake omelet.
Well, and I thought too in Morningstar, part of it was like ascending to the spire and things too. Like I thought, I didn't think that this passage of the Stains that we're going to talk about later was always.
Yeah, no, it's
passage.
Definitely.
This is just the far
It's definitely
passage
not
of the
been
Stains.
what happened with the book.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Something to build up to.
So definitely, because we are going to first start. There's so many cliffhangers in how we're cutting these. Thanks, Patreon. We knew last episode we ended and we were just being attacked, and this is now Cassius and never remember the Obsidian's names.
Sigurd.
Trying to kind of go into almost not combat mode. They're not really trying to fight anybody because
evasive mode.
Yeah, because the golds get destroyed.
Yeah, well then there's golds flying in and they get annihilated.
Yeah.
Cassius is like, all right, let's fly out of here. And Lyria's like, what the fuck? What? Are you a moron?
Yeah.
Like, did you not see that?
I do like that moment. And like coming into it too, it's like from where you guys ended last episode, it's so tender because they're in the lift together and Lyria and Cassius hold hands and like it's this great exchange, and then they come up and like all hell breaks loose.
But I will say that I only made 2 notes while listening all today, which is 2 more than last week. That this is Cassius says, "I am your shield, stay in my shadow." And I just really like that it's like, I will protect you. Like, aww, our little sweet boy.
Yeah, I know. Cassius loves his little red girl.
His little red girl.
Well, but also like, I think that's how Cassius has always viewed himself. And in the beginning, he had a much more narrowed view of who he was a shield for, right? It was for Juliet and Gold and what he thought was right there. But he still always viewed himself as a protector. And then as his life changes and blows apart and he tries to reform everything, we see throughout the series and also throughout this book earlier, that he is the one that's going and trying to rescue others. He's constantly putting himself forward before others and acting as that shield. And I like that we have it stated so clearly here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm proud of his little evolution.
Yeah, spreading his wings, as it were.
Yeah, he's totally won me over from, he's no longer a little dolphin boy that I would keep on vacation. He can come home now. He can be a permanent resident of my life. It's fine. He can not just stay on vacation. He's definitely had one of the best characters. I think him and Lyria. Lyria is another character that when I started Iron Gold, did not like her. Like, why are you whiny? Whatever. And now by this point, definitely one of my favorite characters. So the two of them together.
My friend has just started Iron Gold, and he was on chapter 4.
Yeah.
And he texts me, he's like, man, I do not like Lyria. And for him, I think it was mostly the voice actress. But still, it's like, man, that was fast.
I was about to ask if he was an audiobook listener, because I do know it seems like that's where a strong segment of people that have issues with her come from. I was a early Lyria adopter, like before it was cool.
Lyria hipster.
Right, exactly. Because I just liked having a red perspective again.
Yeah.
Like, yes, I know Darrow is red. and he is gold, but like his life perspective changes so much. And so I loved having that back. But it is interesting, like she does grow a ton, and like just like Cassius, like, okay, he always had this part of him that's a shield. It just expanded for who he was willing to be a shield for. Lyria always had this scrappy part of her, but it was such a narrowed view. Like she hadn't been exposed to anything. And then suddenly she sees how much bigger the world is and how her suffering, although very real compared to everything else. So the characters can't help but change, like they're thrust into these scenarios that force them to, grow that way. And
they're well past the bounds of comfort.
and that's why it's so nice to see these two gravitate toward each other.
Well, and like that's the thing too, is like both of them have basically lost their entire families. Lyria only has Liam left. Cassius only has his mother, like sort of
barely.
Yeah. Withered husk that she is. Yeah. So found family, as is always the theme for these books.
Yeah.
So now Cassius is in the middle of this battle. Like, one, he didn't want Lyria to go out on this mission. Like that was something that him, Darrow, and Lyria fought over. And then now it's like the whole thing's slagged and he's trying to get her there safely. And then as I'm reading just about that chaos, I also had the thought of just like how fucked the city is and why didn't Athena think about opening the grav lift sooner? It's part of the reason why this is like such a mess is that they weren't going to, right? Like they were just going to leave everybody up there. And it's like you could have been doing this for like at least a few days.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and we get to me, horrifying, it's one of the things that from my first read through stuck out the most, is the picture of everyone trying, and we've seen it in real life, everyone tries to get to the emergency exit, and that's how there's an actual name of the crowd compression, and how so many people die just trying to get out from things. And that's what we then see is happening is they're all rushing into the sea lift, and therefore absolutely nobody can get out. And that to me was just a heartbreaking. There's a lot in these chapters of like there's no major, I mean there is Sigrid what? Who is
Sigurd.
Sigurd. Sig, our new best friend Sig. We have his death, but other than, and actually Goodman the Jolly, who I will like to talk in depth about because I'm obsessed. We have him, but there's no actual big death. There is no character we have been connected to for long amounts of time in this, but there is a lot of heartbreaking moments. If it is just how the crowd is reacting later on when we see, lots of heartbreak when we talk to Volga, but, Sig's death, Goodman and Fenrir's death, like all of their things. There's a lot in these 5 chapters that's just hits hard in different ways without it being a large character death, if that makes sense.
I picked up on descriptions rather than characters, but the same theme that you're saying of I feel like in these chapters in this whole book, we get these short descriptions of violence that are actually like really brutal, but he doesn't linger on them and they just add up. And so what I wrote it down for was once we're at the feast and Lyria realizes that the table is resting on the golds.
Yes.
And it's only like 2 sentences. I mean, Pierce doesn't linger on it, but it hit me. I'm like, this is like the 8th time that it's been something like really horrific, and it's just throughout everything. Like it just becomes this constant that like we've built up to from Dark Age, and it gets lighter, and so sometimes it's like you lose a little bit of perspective, and then he puts things like that in, and you're like, oh no, they're still like full on war with some psychopaths who love to torture people.
Yeah. I also wonder if it's interesting because Lyria's perspective, and we've talked in the past about how I don't think we've really talked about it in Lightbringer, but we talked definitely in Iron Gold and Dark Age of how Pierce writes each point of view. So, like, Lysander is the detail oriented. I would say Mustang as well. Like, they pick up just because of their personalities. Lyria, um, not as much usually, but in these chapters, like, if we were in Darrow's perspective, I guess is what I'm getting to, he wouldn't necessarily notice these. Maybe in Red Rising, if this was Red Rising Darrow, he would, because he's not used to it. But Darrow that we know in Lightbringer, this is almost just another day. Like, he's so desensitized that this could have been happening throughout and we're not picking up on it. Not probably Lightbringer, but definitely in Dark Age. Like, he's not the one to ever really bring out, hey, there are people nailed to this. And you can't, he's a god of war. Like, there's no way that it's not happening around him, but he's become so desensitized. So I think in these chapters, having it be Lyria, she's been around war in small battles, but not to this capacity. Her only kind of real battle moments is under the guard of someone. Victuals and Volga taking care of it in the mines, right? Like, all of that. But this is the moment where she's deep in it and alone in it. That, like, yes, Fenrir good men for a little bit, Cassius for a little bit, like, but she ends up just, she has to take it all in and be the scared little mouse. I was gonna call her a rat, but I at this point don't want to. We'll discuss the term rat later. But she's like she's not a scared little mouse, but she is. Like, she is dropped into this world that she knows the horrors of her camp way back when, and we know when we open with her that's what we see. But now we have it again of her picking up all these terrible world things, and I think that's what Lyria does really well, of bring the horrors that is happening in this.
Yeah.
That's my perspective for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think Lyria notices a lot more of the personal aspects.
Yeah.
Like, she notices what's happening to the people just in general.
Yeah.
Where Darrow is more the kinetic, and Lysander is pensive.
Yeah.
I will say, previous to these chapters, the one time that stood out to me of Darrow noticing things was with Severo torturing Diomedes.
Oh.
Because he's been around torture, he's been around that, but he was like, hey, the pulling of the molars and then electrocuting the gum was a whole new level. And also, like, watching his friend go through that. But that's the only time that I can think of, as you were talking, of, like, what I saw from him. And then when he described the battle, it wasn't a battle, the ambush earlier in the book with Helios, but he's describing that as a military thing. I mean, he's upset about the loss of life, but he's more so just trying to figure out how did a level of carnage happen, versus, like you said, from Lyria's perspective, it's the personal element of it.
Yeah. Although I don't remember whose point of view do they discuss the corpse crescent, the sigil made out
Darrow's.
of. Oh, that is Darrow's. But it's
all
kind
of like, all of them cringed at that, even Severo. I think Severo cursed or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Because that's the only other one I can think of that. And I wondered if it was Lyria being. But, yeah, very interesting. And we'll see as we get more and more that throughout this, it's kind of building to that. Use the Obsidians as monsters, which Volga gets very offended by, but that is kind of us as the reader sitting there going, what the fuck? Which is an interesting thing. But back to the actual plot. So the other thing, so they fly away to the one garden and the Violet who's there. So talk again about, Lyria picking up those personal things of that Violet sitting playing a harp with a knife and everything. Like, I love those little touches throughout this as well.
So the Violet made sense to me because I think it's just like as a city is going out, like, what do you do? And this person's like, I'm just gonna keep on doing my, like, I can't do anything. But there
goes down.
was right. Then it was followed up with there were a dozen white bearded golds sitting on benches. And I was just really confused by that paragraph. I'm like, who are these golds? Why are they just sitting there? Why are you calling this out?
Yeah.
Wasn't sure if Crescent would have any information on that. I was also confused as to like what role do golds have currently? Like, because they're not trying to evacuate, like they're not trying to help Athena, I don't think. I was just very confused by the presence of the golds.
I also, when they come into the battle and it says golds are coming down, it's like, which golds do they have working for them? Or are they just there as protectors of the city and know to keep the obsidian out and are, at this point?
Yeah, I think because they didn't destroy Europa from orbit.
Yeah.
Right? There's still cities on Europa that have essentially the hierarchy still.
Yeah.
Right? So that would be where those golds would come from.
It was just weird of like how, I guess, like, I can't think of the word, but resigned.
Yeah.
Like he very much was like a dozen of them just sat there. Like, okay. It also said that Cassius said he had been there before in that relic garden, and that confused me. I didn't know. It probably isn't important why he had been there before, but it also just brought up to me like sometimes I have a hard time wrapping my mind around like all the places all of them have been. Like if the solar system is as big as it is.
Yeah.
And they're getting older, but they're still not that old. And so I'm like, what spin-off? Like, and at what point between like killing Octavia and fleeing with Loon when you were supposed to be under the guise of like nobody was supposed to know? I didn't know if it was after Diomedes ushered him off. I was very curious as to when in his life he would have been there.
I don't know.
Yeah. Hard to say. Maybe he went with Aja.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The white bearded golds, I think, are like the council of this city. Because it talks about their dolphin rods leaning in the nooks between their shoulders and necks. And their razors sitting in their laps. And I kind of took that. A black stone building with 10 sides. Its sides are open. Yeah. To me, spoiled just a little bit. There's the meeting later, and we see a whole bunch of leadership with rods. But those are planetary, and I assume this would be city.
Yeah,
I knew when I made that note, I'm like, Crescent will know something
Crescent's
about this.
on it.
At least have a theory.
Yeah, because I noticed the rods too, but I forgot. I haven't in my I read like a couple more chapters after this, but I haven't gotten to that part that I know you're talking about. Yeah. So anyway, they get there. They use the cool jump pads, the pedestrian launch.
I would like those, please.
Yeah.
Yes. Because I mean, Pierce, there's so much tech in the world, but I don't remember those coming up in other books. Maybe it did, but I'm like,
I don't think so.
One of my favorite tech introductions, and want them.
Leapfrog pads.
Mm-hmm. Until they get blown, of course, like as they're mid leap. It's like, yeah.
It's
a danger.
Cool. But yeah, then we end up meeting with Sig's friends. No, we get the Askamani first. Yes. Oh, yes, that's right. And we have to.
Don't look them in the eye, or they'll have to kill you.
Yeah.
Like have to kill you.
Have to. Yeah. Like. the fuck?
Yeah. Yeah, we have to. You're my loot now. Yeah.
And then, though, they are saved by your
Then,
favorite.
Yeah,
my favorite!
named Obsidians.
Goodman the Jolly and Fenrir. Notice how I can remember their names.
Yes.
Which I just immediately love. First off, just Goodman the Jolly is fantastic. Well named that he is the Jolly, because he, like, especially listening in the audiobook, it just comes across as, like, the nicest, most, like, beautiful human being kind of a thing. And then later when he's talking about how he loves parades and I look really good, and he has to do with the Norwegian accent, like, I look really good with ribbons in my hair. Like, just love it. I follow someone on TikTok. I should have, I think his name's, like, it's Henrik someone, and it's Norwegian expectations versus reality. And it's always, he always is shirtless, looking super buff and, like, Viking-esque, and then flips immediately to wearing, like, cozy sweaters and going, yoo-hoo! And that's exactly how I picture this, of, like, you see, like, you would see Goodman come in and have that, like, hard, you know, like, obsidian, like, whatever, and then it's like, hello! I am Goodman the Jolly! Like, and I love him so much. Like, he's just
I like
great.
the moments because, like you said, like there's so much about, is this color like all monsters? But then we have like the moments throughout the book of obsidian levity, and like earlier when it's after the battles on Phobos and we get Valdir and his guys, and just like their banter back and forth is ridiculous. And then they are talking about tangerines, like, what's worse than this? And they start naming off all these like very literal things that are worse.
Yeah.
So like, because that's what drew me to Volga in the first book of this trilogy, of Iron Gold. Like she has that innocence to her, even though was bred and raised to be a killing machine. And then when you see that in them, you're just like, oh, you guys are just adorable.
Yeah.
My sweet babies.
Yeah. But yeah, you immediately with him are like, you know what? Like, I immediately trust him. I was like, Lyria's safe. Who else is gonna, like, admit to putting ribbons in his hair? Like, I miss the parades. And I love, like, Lyria throughout this has touchstones to Mars. So she asks, well, it's part of her plea to Darrow of, like, listen, I don't actually miss Mars, I miss the mines, and has that whole thing. And throughout this book is this, but asks him, what do you miss most about Mars? And he's like, the parades. Like, it's just great. And then she'll later ask the copper, or at least is talk. No, they say, like, from one person of Mars to another or whatever. And but yeah, all these touchstones back to Mars, back to our roots. But I just instantly love him. And as I say, it just, after all that death and violence, and more is coming, we just get this happy moment where you're like, sure, it's great. Like,
and then it's followed up with hunting for leviathans with grays and golds. But the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. 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 But yeah, so we get from there.
He
Lyria gets trussed up and dangled by a cord as loot.
Yes.
And taken to Volga.
Of course you have to time it. Of course.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Little truffle pig.
Oh.
But yeah, I mean, this is my second read through of the book. And I remember this reunion between Lyra and Volga was just like so difficult as a fan of both of them. Volga had become one of my favorite characters. And I think that's why I love the books in general, is Pierce does a really good job with all of his side characters. They're also dimensional and you learn to root for them and things like that. And like you're expecting, like She's literally traveled through space to try to find you. And
Yeah.
then it's just this like cold greeting from Volga. Like Lyra doesn't even recognize her at first, which is crazy. And like, she sees like a reaction in her eyes or something like that. But it's just this like stark, cold moment. And I was tough as a reader who's like a fan of both of them and just wanted it to, I knew it wouldn't be easy, right? But
Yeah.
I was hoping there'd
Mm-hmm.
be a little more love found there.
Yeah.
But Volga's gone through a lot and she's trying to figure out all of where she is in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, the fact that he doesn't just like say, and I see Volga, right? It's like he describes this obsidian, and then it's like, and then her eyes meet mine and she flinches, and that's when she realizes it's Volga. It's like, oh boy, what has happened in the last year,
Yeah.
Is that how long it's been?
roughly?
Yeah, we were trying to. Well, Badger was trying to figure it out of based on what we know from battle, how long we think like from um, the moon in the beginning, the trash moon, to
Yeah,
like how long
it
they've
used to
been
be a
on
part of
there
Trash
to
Moon.
this to like we think. Yeah, our
Yeah, I think
guess
it
is
was
it's
like
been a year.
10 months on the Marcher or something, and then
Yeah.
a couple month-ish long travels.
Turn. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It would be
Yeah.
around a year.
Yeah.
It's a substantial amount of time. And, when you're thrust into a completely different world trying to survive, and Volga's always been a bit malleable. She's never known her place, and that's a big part of her character. Um, so it went from survival, that's enough time to pass. That makes
Yeah.
more sense for how we get to the Volga that we see.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, like she talks about 11 days in. She's like, yeah, I was going to kill him.
Yeah.
And then wiggles his way out of it.
Yeah, we get the hollow cube from Severo in that chapter.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's how Lyria wakes up, which I love that of she can, I think she's like confused at first of like, why the hell can I hear Severo right now? And then
Yeah.
realizes what's happening. Yeah.
It's one of the best Severo moments we've had in the book. It's been a rough book for Severo, right?
Yes.
Like,
Yes, it has.
and to hear him, I mean, we got part of it, with kind of started with him and Cassius and the fight. That was kind of the turning point, and then him and Athena and the and all of that. But to hear him talk about Ragnar and then to talk about his own dad, and it raises this whole concept of absent fathers, or even if they're present, like fathers who have this identity that is so much bigger, which is also Darrow
I
and
was going to
Pax.
say, yeah.
Yeah.
And really, like, any of our main characters have we have a lot of characters who are like sons of major fathers, right? So like Virginia being our daughter of
Yeah.
Nero, a main ruler, and even Cassius, his parents all held positions of power. And so it's like having, even if your father's around, which for Volga Ragnar wasn't, but like it's like the father they knew some things about, but then it was the whole rest of the world telling you about your dad, right?
Yeah.
Like here's what everybody else has to say about your dad. So I thought that's an interesting theme for Pierce to play on, because it's clearly Volga has identity issues, through no fault of her own, but it's trying to figure out where does she pull from and who does she listen to.
For sure. Well, and for her, like, yeah, so Ragnar's not around, but Ephraim became the father figure, but wasn't like, not to say anything too bad about like let's not say too bad about the dead, but he also wasn't that great of a person, like at his
No,
core.
exactly.
Like, he had his
He was
own trauma,
deeply,
and
deeply hurt. Yeah.
yes, and took it out on her. So even then, her quote unquote found family was not necessarily, like, her found father was not the best. That now having someone who is, as much as us as the reader knows, lying. Well, it's hard because we know, like, Fa is faking being Fa, but I think he does genuinely care for Volga. Like, we see that when he's talking to Atlas of wants to take her just to a safer place and all that. So as much as he is lying to her and he is doing these terrible things, he is acting from almost a place of love when it's around her, and she's gonna eat up everything he says, whether or not it's truth or lie, because she finally has basically stability. And it's just unfortunate that she doesn't get to see him as the, like, gentleman that we know he could be. She only sees him as the warlord, but has still given in to the major, like, still trusts in that, which is interesting.
Yeah. The fact, I mean, the brainwashing and deep desire to find home and family and acceptance are, like, real strong, right?
Yeah.
Because Lyria is, I mean, straight up says, like, he ate Ephraim's heart. And she says something, she's like, she repeats it, like, he ate Ephraim's heart. And she's like, that's a sign of respect. And it's like she's already just taken the bait, hook, line, sinker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he clearly has figured out, he knows, either him or Atlas, what is every line that they are going to feed her. Let's preemptively get ahead of you, because, well, yep, he said you'd say that. He said you'd say that, right? Like, like, really interesting of that, of let's get ahead of it so that we know, like, I don't have to come up with the excuses later. Here they all are already.
Well, and like you said, it's easy to poke holes in Ephraim's, like, love for her, unfortunately. And, like, I love Ephraim. Again, he's, like, another one of my favorite characters.
Yeah.
It's why I like the second half of the series, is because we have these great supplementary characters. But when Volga rails on him, like, a lot of what she says is true. She says things like, he treated everyone like a tool. He used me from the day he met me. If I were not useful, he would have discarded me. And Ephraim came around, but for most of the time, she was just pining for his love. She was waiting there at the bar, wanting to have another drink with him, following him out, trying to save him. I mean, it was her chasing him. And so now she has someone that's chasing her, right? From a family point of view, who's trying to bring her into the fold, who is showing her what this should look like. And it's a messed up version of what it should look like, but she's finally getting that from somebody for maybe the first time.
Yeah. And she doesn't know any better. It's not like she, grew up and could see what her friend's home life was like. Like, she doesn't know what, rather than, like, what people tell her. Like, she can only...
she got the grimace slave kennels and the dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Lyria notices too, I think she says, like, there's always been a dark part of her, a part only willing to use the gun she so fancied. And, like, so she knew this part of Volga always existed, and that it was, get the right person in, they're gonna pull it out of her. But I mean, that's basically every character in this book, right? It's every human. We have dark and we have light, and it's just, who are they going to be around? What are they going to follow? Who's going to actually be able to lead them in the right way? And Volga's just not in a good spot.
No, for sure.
I was glad she got to hear about her dad, and she got to hear about it
from Zephyr.
From somebody who considered him a brother.
Well, and brings out the good and the bad of, like, don't listen to the myth of your father, right? Like, because everyone has become so obsessed and that myth can be changed so much. So like let's talk about this, that like yeah, he did good things and he did bad, but like here's who he was and here's who you should be. And you know, and says like you didn't know him and Fa didn't know him. So like Fa's connection and this link of like that's my child, like it's just pure DNA. So no, like you don't get to pull that of like, oh well, like we are the blood of Ragnar. Like, yeah, I guess you are, but also like
What does
no.
that mean?
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
This is the second time in 2 chapters that we get the imagery of the shield. Because as we know too, Ragnar is like the shield of Tinos.
Yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
too though, Severo even says, you know, he
Yeah.
was a shield and goes into that.
Yeah.
And you know, we have these characters with rough edges and killing tendencies and things like that, or we got
Yeah.
a lot of softies and a lot of people that are just
Yeah.
trying to protect others.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Uh yeah, I
You were
just
talking,
oh, go.
I was
Go
gonna
on.
say, you were talking about like signs that Fa was feeding her too, and
Yeah.
like things sort of preempt this or protect against it. Um, and she goes on her criticism of the Republic, which some of that's pretty valid too. You know, it's
Yeah.
like how much has really changed in 10 years, you know? And we know that, and that's not necessarily a fault on the Republic. I mean, this whole,
Yeah, it's a
again,
galactic empire. Like,
Yeah.
right. And the whole second
how
half of
much
the
change
series,
can you reasonably make that
right? Like,
quickly?
great, you won a war, but then building is a lot harder and they're still at war.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and we
Like,
know of the Obsidian abuse. Like Volga calls it out, and we know that's why Sephi left. Like we've been dealing with this ongoing theme of the Obsidian being having loss of life higher than any other color during this war, just because they are the ones bred for war, and it's why Sephi in Iron Gold gets, you know, like you know what, I can't do this to my people anymore, and now we're just repeating it here. So Volga's statements echoes her aunt's. I feel like we never actually reference the fact that Sephi would be Volga's aunt. Yeah, like it's very we've seen it repeated. So yeah, when they're talking about it, of course, like what's Lyria's response to that going to be when it is proven time and time again that the obsidian continued to get used by the Republic in the same almost manner that the society had. Like it is a difficult situation.
and the same of a lot of the Reds. I mean, that's where
Yeah.
Lyra's anger and frustration and everything started from, was because, okay, great, you freed us,
Mm-hmm.
but
What does
this
that
isn't
mean?
free, you know?
Yeah.
So you freed us from what you thought we needed to be changed into. And somebody, I can't remember if it was Lyria. Yeah, I think Lyria mentions Harmony, but we get this
Yes.
comparison of Volga to Harmony, of that bitterness can breed entitlement. And that had the potential for Lyria too. Like Lyria was very much going down that path.
Yeah.
And so
100%.
we've got here showing us this danger from what bitterness can lead to in 3 women in the novels. And it's like, I don't know if it was intentional to have that happen with all 3 women,
Yeah.
because I can't think of another character that I'm sure there is one, right? But that, like, that feeling so wronged by, like, a lower color that's
Yeah.
feeling so wrong, feeling like, you know, the Republican turned on them. And that really carries that in such that all-consuming way that it takes a good person and turns them into potentially a monster, like it did with Harmony being the most extreme example of that.
Yeah. I would say almost Ephraim. Like I don't like he's just on that cusp
Oh
because
yeah.
he's
Mm-hmm.
lost so much because of Republic. He lost Trig, he lost friends, he's lost all that. That we do see him in his, definitely drug addicted or substance addicted to some capacity, not knowing how to care for people. But you're right that Harmony and almost Volga, well, we all basically, and Lyria calls it out of, you are turning into her. Like, are you going to start enslaving women to breed for your armies? Like, are you going to be doing this?
Are you
Ephraim
going to
never
start killing babies?
Yeah, Ephraim never got
Like-
to that capacity because but I think he is on that path because of, he feels so wronged by the Republic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's definitely walking around with middle fingers in the air.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Is Ephraim the real Slim Shady? Walking
Too bad
around
he
with one of
can't.
these. Can't what's it?
Yeah.
Yeah, not anymore. Yeah, this is.
I was just gonna say of like such a, beautiful speech from Lyria to try and win her friend back and call her out. Lyria has had so many back-to-back speeches of calling out Darrow, calling out, and just standing up for herself in through all of this and just spitting the truth. Like, she's gotten really good at just calling it as she sees it and leaving the rage back. Like, before we saw rageful Lyria, now it is like the anger's still there. She's a little bit of a Spitfire still. I was gonna say spitball, and then I was like, that's not it. Spitfire.
Well, sometimes it's kind of a spitball. It's okay.
It's spit something.
You're spitballing. It's fine.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. But yeah, like, she's still got her oomph there, but it's now being directed in such a good manner of, she's almost becoming like a Politico. Like, she's someone that I can see leading the Reds. I could not in Iron Gold and even Dark Age as a leader, but now she's someone that, like, let's say leads Reds or joins the Daughters of Ares or whoever, Sons of Ares, and helps them through that, like, linking, because she is becoming so good at connecting with these people and and getting them to at least listen. We know Volga does not. I think she etches. She cracks the surface a little bit, but Volga definitely
she lays the groundwork.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
I think it definitely made a dent that it needed to make.
She's scoring the glass.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's a good lens or mirror for people. Like, she forces them to look at things that they didn't have to otherwise because they're not around people like her. They're not like, really, like, what does Lyria have to lose too? Like, I mean, in this situation it's death probably, but like what's like for her and like Darrow, like, yeah, she's terrified, but also like she's on a ship with him. He's either gonna send her back or, like, she's not one of his soldiers. She's not somebody that works in the household or lives there. Like, she's this outsider that's been thrust into this game with all of these big figures, and she's learned that what she can do is speak her truth and be tough in her own way, and like remind them of, like, there's an entire worlds plural of people out there that are like actually the ones that you're living and fighting for. Like, that's what Lyria represents. She represents everything outside of the battle.
For sure. Well, and I think it also helps, as you say, of like, she's this outsider, but she also, I think, at this point no longer fears her own death. I think she almost sees it, I don't know if as inevitable, but she's not scared to put herself in those positions because she's more worried about Liam. She's more worried about getting the world to a place that is good for her nephew. And so that's, we see, like, she spits out the suicide pill because, quote unquote, suicide pill. It's a brand mint. That's my favorite. I love
on principle, I throw it in the ocean.
Yeah. And I like that she also doesn't give her a second one.
I know,
Like,
she's like, you're done.
A tin of mints. And then she's like, well, that's on you now.
Yeah. Suck it. But yeah,
I feel like Lyria has faced down her mortality several times at this point. And that's absolutely leading to her kind of just not giving a shit about it. It's like, I would rather make the world's better for the people I care about than worry about whether I'm going to be in it.
Yeah, for sure.
And that links well to one of my favorite lines in the whole series is at the end of this chapter, which is once Volga shows her the heads of our jolly friend and Fenrir. Are you afraid? And she says, I've been afraid since I can remember, but I ain't given up. It's like, girl.
Yeah.
Red tenacity.
Love it.
Human
love
tenacity.
It. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. But then we get one of my, like, it's an interesting little interlude of a chapter of Lyria and the Copper, who is very interesting, of this slave copper who just, like, I don't know, it's funny because I think a lot of the times we just, like, coppers are administrative, but we often talk just as, like, the lawyers, but it's literally someone who's, like, standing there with the list of, like, this is all the food they need, and, like, this is what, like, it is so just, like, list oriented, and this is what I've had to do.
I know you want to talk about the copper, but since you mentioned the list, I do want to talk about the scale of this party and how I want to go to it. Like, not like a death killing party, but like it was 400,000 liters of mead and 600,000 liters of wine, and I was just like, that's like, amazing.
Yeah,
it's like any wedding on steroids. Like they do know how to throw a good one.
Oh yeah.
And what is like 100,000 oryx? Like, yep, that's a feast.
Yep. That's how you keep them happy.
Oh yeah.
And
that's
I mean,
I was gonna say, parties is literally how the French settled Canada is. So here's a fun fact for you: is obviously Canada being crazy cold, Europeans kept trying to come over and would just die off. Like the Vikings first in the 800s couldn't last. The French came, then the English came, and then the French came back. And Quebec City is the oldest European settlement in North America, and the reason it was able to sustain itself is because of the parties they would throw all winter long, because that's the only way to keep morale up, is that they would have these giant feasts every week in order to get everyone well fed and wanting to stay there. And then eventually they end up bringing over, because it was all men, there's what's called the Daughters of the King, which they rounded up kind of every woman who was lower class on the streets around 16 to 18 years old and shipped them to Canada to be wives. Not the best portion of our history, but
that sounds more like French history than Canada's history.
They're
the ones that did it.
They're the ones who did it into Quebec, though. So
true. But it's not like Quebec was like, give us wives.
Women.
No,
maybe they were.
But
I guess maybe.
But yeah, anyway, so then but women. Oh, I was going to say a lot of women were actually willing to do this because they knew that this Quebec life was kind of better than living in France, because, well, I'm getting well fed and like a husband and like a position and land and stuff. But the tradition of having parties, especially in cold places, to kind of keep up that morale is one that the Vikings use, is one that then Canada was basically founded on, of the only way to stay alive.
It's how I describe Minnesota winter
to
people. I'm like, no, it makes it okay. Like there's like festivals, there's always something going on every weekend. People are getting outside. Like that's what makes it bearable. So, okay, between the Vikings and the Obsidians and us,
Yeah.
we're all in it together.
We're all in it together. You gotta somehow keep your spirits high. But it is a way of winning people over to your side because, well, what are they gonna do if, oh, I no longer want to be here anymore? All right, no more food, and you're gonna be freezing. Have fun. Good luck. See how that works for you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, and just scale that up to however many 100,000 Obsidian Braves.
Yeah.
I appreciate when
there?
does.
They're no longer happy, and all of a sudden, here I go murdering again.
Yep.
Well, and I appreciate when Pierce does put in things like this list to try to help the reader wrap their mind around size, because I have a hard time with that throughout this whole series and like any big sci-fi. Even like the size of ships, right? Like when we're talking about their like several kilometers long and things like that. So that like I knew it obviously had to be a large force that they landed with, and this is only part of their force. They still have the rest there that's um, protecting Demeter's garden, but like it's just mind-boggling numbers. So I'm like, okay, once you start talking in food and drink, I can process that.
Yeah.
Hello.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it would take me forever to drink all that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and then we do also the copper is really good at explaining the situation of the obsidian, of counting the islands, how many, okay, fourth island, and Lyria's response of like, it's a hierarchy. Like the hierarchy's back. And I don't remember the exact quote, but basically it's like, if you have only lived in a house that's square, what shape do you build your house? And makes it very interesting of, you know, we've seen it as well of like almost the Reds kind of harmony creating not necessarily a hierarchy, but trying to get rid of the gamma at least. Um, but very interesting of how the copper lays it out of like this is what's happening, like this is how it's going down, and what they're creating is just another world, which we did know from the last chapter that Volga's been reading the ancient histories
Mm-hmm.
and is said like basically is going through of like history repeats itself, but is studying like Alexander, I think Genghis Khan, like all of those big people of like this is how they got there and then now we're doing it like
Right. It's okay for all of them. Why isn't it okay for me? But yeah, it's the repetition of the hierarchy. I will say, I know this is outside of our chapters, but Quicksilver's whole tabula rasa thing,
yeah.
I mean, that's what he's trying to avoid.
Yeah.
The whole plot line to me is a little bonkers, and I don't know if we will ever see where it goes, right? But that's his whole argument for it, is that and that's why he doesn't meet them, or the at least hasn't so far, is because he's afraid that he would influence them in some way, and they would be coming from your square house, and then they would start to build that way. But it's like, it's scary. It's like, is that really the only way to avoid this is to have a brand new generation?
Yeah, which I mean, we definitely should have a deep dive. I am a big person of nature versus nurture. And so even if they do not know, we had a whole thing of do you teach them any of the histories or is that going to tell them one thing or another? But then we know that like there's the famous quote of people who don't learn history are bound to repeat it. So is there a case there of even if you don't come from the square house, is it just a human nature for us to, have those moments of, well, you're the best leader, or like whoever has the power grab. That's better. Like a good leader to me leads from within. But if there's someone who just says themselves of like, I'm clearly the smartest here, that's where you then start getting the power and however. So, I would love to go back into all of that at some
Put
point.
it on the
But
list.
yeah, we're gonna have a deep dive
Mhm.
about that one. But I think for sure that's a good call out of can a society be built in the way that the society in the book is trying of making everything a true republic, making everybody equal, because we're seeing already in these chapters that it's not even working out a little bit for the society, but better at least than sorry,
Vice
it's not
versa.
That
Yeah.
vice versa, that the republic is how are they working out, or are they just going to become a different society or aspect of it? um, so yeah, very interesting, all of this, and how the Obsidian
Yeah.
are dealing with it all.
And the other thing I wondered too is like, okay, the Obsidians, yes, Square House, but how much of it is Atlas?
Oh, 100%.
How much of it is like split them up,
Yep.
make them lesser than,
Yep.
and and we have no issues.
well, and if we're okay to make the jump because it's right around the corner there to the Passage of Stains,
Yeah.
I mean, that's all Atlas's manipulation of Fa too. I mean, he told him several chapters earlier that his Fa mentioned something about bringing Volt. Like, I want to retire. I want to have my fancy
Yeah.
villa here, and this and that, and I want to have my granddaughter. He calls his daughter, and like Atlas bristles at that. He's like, I know you think that that's not going to happen, and Atlas tells him, like, I think he even says the words like, you have to get her hands bloody or something like that. But that essentially, like, you have to bathe her in the same shame that you have, so she can't just turn up her nose at you. So that's why he starts putting her in charge of some of these hunting parties and things like that. But like, this is the ultimate way of, like, what a
Yeah.
shitty father slash
Yeah.
grandfather slash father stand-in of like, nope, I'm just going to bind you to me by giving you this intense emotional trauma that you'll never be able to shake the rest of your life. And it involves killing your only friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's the giant lodestone of shame.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. But it's all Atlas. It's Atlas that puts it in his head.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a
Everything's
good call.
Atlas.
Everything's Atlas.
It's all Atlas all the way down. Just like it's turtles all the way down.
All the way down.
Right.
I got you. I immediately got that
I
reference.
caught it. Yep.
Um, yeah. Super interesting to think about that. You're right. I mean, and clearly the copper doesn't know, but Atlas is just, it's the easiest way to control, is to divide and the way he praises, we see it with the hunting parties of they go through of this is who killed this creature and this is who killed this one and this is who gets the honor of, like, he killed the leviathan, like, and it's this like praise of the third band that we saw repeated in the laurels in Red Rising of look what the gammas are doing and all of this, that it's like, okay, like, even if they are equally fighting and doing whatever, like, this is basically a laurel is what they're having in that laurel tide.
Yep. Oh,
Well,
100%.
and those Atlas imprints are how Arrow starts to put it all together too, before Diomedes opens up to him about what happened on the bridge. But it's like there's a somebody pulling the strings here, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is not the Obsidians that he knew where they were at that point. He doesn't know as much about the Ascomani, but they have a shit ton of research and knowledge and things too that Virginia shipped over. And it's yeah, like, Atlas seems to be everywhere all at once. And they talk us through it of like how the timeline was supposed to go and like how so much of this started 12 years ago. But
Yeah.
it's still hard for me to wrap my mind around. And also how he's like so willing to, like, he started this 12 years ago for Octavia or himself, but like he's so willing to like throw that aside and just insert Lysander and as like the new piece. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's
just a big question mark to me.
Yeah. It's super interesting how it all goes down. Well, that's kind of it for our conversation with the copper. So then we get the suicide pill.
Larger.
Yeah, we get the suicide pill though. We did touch on that, but I just absolutely love that. And then it's a breath mint because this thing is gonna go into your mouth, and it tastes like rust at like just
rust and cowspit. How does
Mm.
Lyria know what cowspit tastes like?
I also wonder that. How does Pierce know what cowspit tastes like? Like, is it really that different than, I guess human spit and grass? I have questions. I don't want them answered. Because if you message us answering that question, I have a lot of questions about you.
And it's just a never-ending spiral of
It's
questions.
just
Atlas all the way down.
Atlas all the way down. Is that going to be the title of this episode? Just Atlas all the way down. We'll discuss.
Maybe. Atlas isn't even really in these chapters, but
no,
he's still
not.
everywhere.
But he's still everywhere.
His imprint is everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have the big feast. We have the big party. And then Fa shows us how he's going to win over / just bind his granddaughter to himself at her.
Yeah.
The rest of her.
Well, and Lyria at this point, so she gets the thing taken off, and Volga's like, she is going to, be blasphemous against the All-Father. And Lyria does. Lyria calls it out of who the All-Father is. It's like, yeah. But then nobody's paying attention because Fa hasn't asked for their attention. So it's like, good attempt, Lyria. Good attempt to your audience of just Sig.
A for effort.
Yeah.
Tries.
I would love to know though if in that moment, if there is a slight panic from Fa of how have they even guessed that it's Atlas.
Because I guess I hadn't thought about that this is probably the first time that it's called out to his face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Does he think that they've left, it's impossible to cover all of your tracks, so someone will, or did they think they were doing such a good job that nobody would track it back to Atlas?
I think they were a little prepared for it though, because Lyria brings it up to Volga previously when they're in the room with the hollow cube and stuff. And she mentions Fa, and Volga says, no, I've already talked to him about that.
He broke free from Fa in the Kuiper Belt.
So I wonder if there were already... Yeah, I wonder if there have been other mutterings of his relationship with with Fa and Atlas, and so maybe it doesn't stand out to him very much, or maybe they did expect somebody to put it together because obviously he preempted it a little bit.
Yeah. Yep. That's a good point.
We see that Sig captured too.
Yeah.
He's there with him, a trident, probably a whole bunch of gold.
Yep. And this is where we get, there was a moaning sound, and she finally realizes that golds are being put under the table and being horrendous. It's a very interesting, so feasts happening, but this gore that's all around. And then so Sig's dad, let's talk father-son.
Right. Speaking of,
he's there and does not come forward for him.
Not even a little.
Gets called out by him.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So talk about someone who we don't know their relationship previous to that, but at least you would have assumed if Sig had followed him to this ends that there was something there. Like they clearly have at least been raised together, unlike, let's say, Ragnar Fa situation. Like, and then nope, he's not gonna stand with me. It's a very interesting relationship there as we
Well, and we
talk
were
father son.
warned a little bit when Darrow first comes across him and
Yeah,
says that, it is one of the Volk that he recognizes, that he's cowardly, greed driven. Like, we know this isn't the most stand up guy to begin with. But even then, it's quite the divide to see him sit back. And we know that he doesn't really like Fa.
right.
That he's not like a strong follower of his, but he's not willing to put his neck forward to protect his son, who's
Yeah.
now this prisoner of war, like gift of handed over by one of the bands.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. But that's kind of then Lyria's grounding point of at least they can speak to each other and kind of have a little bit of, back and forth in that moment. But seeing how tall he stands, and she kind of has this, like, somewhat it's going to be okay, even though I don't think she truly feels that. I think she feels that until the gauntlet comes out and she realizes the passage of the
Well, and
stain.
he's the one, because she's
Who
mimicking
says
him.
we're fucked. Like,
he's the one that comes out and says we're about to die in a very painful way.
yes.
Yeah. I didn't know that they had a whole special device for that. I thought Fa just ate hearts, but apparently they've got
To the right of the sternum.
Yeah.
Up. Wait for the click.
comes with instructions, little
Yeah.
manual.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's great. Just because these two things happen at the same time, which is fascinating to me, let's talk Leviathan for a second. That we get the Leviathan brought in. We know it is the house beast or whatever of
Yeah, the sigil beast of
Sigil
Excalibur.
Beast. Yeah.
The one that Sevro earlier said that he really
Yes.
wanted to see. That he
Iaxares.
Yeah. 300 years old, which I think is so cool. For the record, the current living Greenland shark is 300 to 400 years old. So that's what we're talking about.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
there
wild.
is, if Greenland sharks existed, like, people throw around dates of, like, they can be older than the United States. Like, they were around in the 1700s. Like, yep. Like, the one shark. I'm not talking the species. One shark can be known to be 350 years old. Like, so that was where my mind went with this, is like, this is how much human history this Leviathan has seen, which I think is also really cool as a world building device of when did the carvers start making these? Well, at least 300 years before this. Like, so the carvers have been doing this for a while.
Well, and like I said, this was my reread. I remember this scene for many reasons. I forgot that it was alive.
Yes.
When they,
Yeah.
and it gets explained after these chapters how, because I was still like, I'm like, but how? How is all of this happening?
How is the thing with the thing?
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, I love it. And I really like that the two go hand in hand. And Lyria's she ends up distracted almost by a lot of the Leviathan, and then goes back to what's happening of, like, the ceremony of, like, oh, someone else is dead. They're cutting off the Leviathan's fins. And it flips back and forth of this giant beast being killed while these humans are being killed. Like, I really like that kind of back and forth. And what's happening of, like, you would assume that she would just be all consumed with the fact of coming down the line is basically her death by her best friend. But I think this is, we talk about how she's basically already accepted her death, that she can be distracted enough of, like, There's colors changing over there. What are they doing? Like, what's happening? Like, really interesting, that back and forth. So I just wanted to call that out because they'll fit together as we have this discussion.
No, for sure. And Pierce was very intentional with doing them together for that reason. But like, she's also probably distracted out of, I mean, self-preservation isn't the right term because she doesn't know that she's going to be, but like, your mind can't focus on like the super horrible thing that's coming your way, right? Like, her brain is trying to track onto anything else. Like, she knows which one's dropping at which point, and like this one's still standing and this one's not, but like you're grasping for anything else to avoid this horror.
Yeah. And I mean, like, she is really, really like mournful about the fact that Faw's just like, kills the thing, right? And it's just this super old, kind of majestic beast. Like, what a waste.
Yeah. Well, and we know Volga looks away. Volga is like, doesn't want to watch it.
And that's what I was about to say. She's also upset that her friend is letting it happen. Like, at least we see part of old Volga of like, okay, she isn't okay with this, but also like, okay, like this is what you want to be a part of. This is your family. This is what you've been longing for and have found. Like this, that their culture so disrupts everything else though that you've wanted in your life.
Yeah. I feel bad for the Leviathan. We know I love all my mythological creatures. But I think this one especially is done with such, like, Fuzz hacking at it. Like, continues.
It takes them a while.
Yeah. And, like, has to get through all the scales with his stupid trident. I'm like, how? Like,
trident.
I don't know. It just seems so pretentious to be using a freaking trident against it. You are not Poseidon.
He was just given it as a gift, so he has to use it.
He has to use it because he thinks he's Poseidon. He's got a trident. He's going to kill the Leviathan. Like,
no. He's going to try to kill the Leviathan.
So yeah, I'm just because the chapter ends with it. I did not see the repeat of the dead horses coming.
Right?
All that. And think
at the last moment, like, Sig is dead, Lyria is about to be, and it's Volga hesitates, and then boom. Okay, think back to your first read-throughs.
Has let loose.
First read-through. So you did not see it coming. I didn't see it coming.
I think part of
it... I started picking up on it as the chapter was going on. Like, why? Like, what?
What's happening?
What's this blister? And then, like, you've got the dead horses. You've got Thebes, I think, is the moon. Or the asteroid that they use, the proverbial dead horse.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, it's not uncommon, but it's certainly unexpected. But yeah, I think for me, once she starts focusing on like this large blister, I'm like, what? Hold on. What's happening here?
Yeah.
Yeah. He definitely starts to let us know, like, those like last few paragraphs. But I think because the Leviathan was alive, like, that's part of why my brain, because the horses were dead.
Yeah. My idea is that there was dead horses that they cut the belly in, and then we actually have discussed on this podcast of how do two people fit in a dead, like, how big is this dead horse, like, whatever. That you're right in comparison to, it's like, what the fuck do you mean you're in a alive, like, you Jonah and the whaled it, like, you somehow got swallowed by this. We will find out later, how it all went down, but like,
I know
this is not the first time Ragnar cut himself out of a sea demon's rectum. Like,
apparently they don't like to chew. But I know there was like some initial like light debate in the fandom when the book first came out and people were doing their first reads of like I think some people were critical of Pierce for like rehashing a move like that. I loved it because
I
part of what
love
I
it.
love, yeah, like part of what I love about Lightbringer is that it does have so much of the feeling of the first trilogy too. And
Yeah.
so for me, that was him on the nose doing it. Like it was a wink and a nod and saying these are the same mangy crew that you
these
love.
the original guys. Like,
Yeah.
what more do you want?
I mean, because Severo is in one of the like Severo lives in the dead. Like
Yeah,
Cassius and
Severo
Darrow
is-
do not, but Severo is a dead horse with Tactus, right? It's the two of them.
Yep.
I didn't view it as lazy writing at all. I
No.
viewed it as very intentional of like our
100%.
characters are still the ones that you know, the ones that you love, and all of that.
Yeah. For sure. I love it. And I like the reveal that even then, like, you kind of, like, who else is it gonna be once it's, like, this black figure? You're like, there's only, like, who else would be coming? Like, it would be
A
crazy.
black demon comes out, like,
Followed by two others, right? Like,
yeah,
and then.
and wielding two swords. It's like, oh.
And and then one is in the shape of.
Right, no, originally it just says he's got two swords, and then it really digs in. It's like one like, curved sword. It's like,
and then the helmet comes.
I feel like that's Darrow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But like you said, Skipper, it was just in the nick of time.
Yeah, I was going to say, so we kind of missed the passage of the Stains. We got too excited about the Leviathan there. But to jump back, like, Volga Lyria, what are views of, Volga at the last minute stops from killing her best friend?
So I was really, really thankful that Pierce gave us that, because Volga does decide on her own. And I couldn't remember in the reread if it was Darrow coming out of the Leviathan that stopped it. And I'm glad that we saw her take the action. Like she, her will to kill me crumbles. The gauntlet sinks to her side. Like we know she would have stopped anyway. And I think that is so, so, so important for her character, for their friendship. And like there isn't a question, right?
Yeah.
Of were you going to go down this? I mean, she already killed 11 people, which is still pretty damn bad. But she like was able to stop and realize this is her only friend and that she does not want to go down that path.
For sure. Yeah, I agree. I also forgot on this. This is my third read through, and I forgot that Lyria did not, or sorry, that Volga didn't makes that choice rather than Darrow. Like I was sitting there being like, when does Darrow pop out? Like when? What's happening? Like when? And I forgot that Sig died. Like I was like, oh yeah, like it gets all the way to that moment. It's not even like Volga's questioning at Sig. It takes to her like her friend, her one friend in the whole world.
Yeah. We didn't lose her all the way.
I really like how Lyria like kind of drives the final nail into the coffin of her not going through with it. You don't have to be broken like him, Ephraim's daughter.
Yeah.
Done and dusted.
So good.
Yeah. It was a great end to a chapter.
Very great end to the chapter.
I was listening to this today while I was making lunch, and it gets to where Darrow comes out and his helmet slithers back, and I like literally jumping around the kitchen, like fist pumping.
Yeah. So good.
Yeah. Since I ordered so many copies of Lightbringer, because there were all like the different, like we got the one at HellerCon and we got like so I had multiple ones. So I have my one that I wrote in the first read through, and I I like rereading that one. But yeah, I think I like scribbled all over the page on that. Like, hell yeah. Like it's very,
Yeah.
it's very covered.
That's awesome.
Then shortly after that, because we also had those of us who are at HowlerCon, some of us signed each other's books, and I told people that they could sign wherever. Shortly after that is where Crescent signed, because you're like, favorite chapter.
Ooh. Look at you.
Sorry, which one did I sign?
I think it's next week's discussion.
I assume
should
some
be
clang
probably
clang
73.
73.
My absolute favorite chapter, 73.
Yeah. Well, that brings us to the end. So, with the passage, we got this chapter, we got Lyria and Volga, Lyria and Cassius for sure, Severo and everyone, it appears. All the fathers. That was an interesting call out of I never made the connection of how many father-son relationships are called out in this thing. Any other comments? Things that we've missed?
I really like that we get 5 this set, but 6 total uninterrupted Lyria chapters.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like when it's just jumping back and forth to her, it like kind of does her a little bit of a disservice. But like when she just gets to like roll through chapters,
Yeah,
it's
a good time.
for sure.
And I also liked, separate from that, but as far as like chapters and pacing and things, we get into shorter chapters. Like these are really quick. Some of the ones right before and right after are as well, which is intentional. But like with some of the battles or things beforehand, I mean, they were like Punky Boys. Like on audiobook, it's like almost some 30-minute chapters, and pacing is really important. And like what we're getting into now, like the pacing just escalates from here up.
For sure.
Yeah, we go from there's some that are 33, 35 minutes. I think 35 minutes is kind of the nope, of course it's a Lysander chapter. 46 minutes.
Of course it is. Later?
Nobody
Do we have to deal with that later?
No, that's early. That's
God,
early.
we're done
Chapter
with it.
15.
Okay, thank you. I was like, I don't want another one of those.
Yeah. Oh, no, there's another.
Oh.
There's another long one. It's a Lysander chapter.
Of course it is. He's got a monologue.
But it's worth it.
Okay. Okay.
But yeah, we're
not spoiling at all that one.
I dig the quick burst chapters. It's like there is nothing more punchy than Pierce at his action sceniest.
Well, it was so that calls it today. I was driving home from work while listening, which is how I usually consume these before we record. And the last chapter is, I think, 6 minutes and 45 seconds.
Yep.
And the way my car has a screen, and I have the map up on one side and it'll show the audiobook on the other. And when it's doing the dual, I can see how close to the end of the chapter it is, but not the second. So I purposely went in to just show the audiobook, because then you can see how many minutes and seconds it is. Because I was sitting there at the end being like, wait, does the reveal not happen in this? Like, I couldn't remember. I was like, where's the reveal? Like, where's the reveal? And it is 5 seconds to the end. And that chapter alone is 6 minutes 45, but feels, because you get so much. You get the passage of the stain. Yeah. You get the Leviathan. You get Fa's reaction. Like, there's so much happening in that less than 7 minutes. Mm-hmm. That I was like, there's no way that this is the portion that they pop out of the Leviathan. And it is the last 5 seconds is that
his helmet slithers back and he howls.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Ooh.
So
it was a good sprint chapters with a lot in there.
Yeah.
A lot of
actually
stuff.
we did have a couple longer chapters in this.
Yeah, there's
67 is 25 minutes. Chapter 68 is 24 minutes.
Yeah. Because it
It's just the total is brought down by a 6-minute chapter and a 10-minute chapter.
Yeah, because I listened to on the way to work and home from work, so it would have been just short of 2 hours of listening, approximately. I listen to some of their music in there, but because I don't want to ever get to work, like I have to cut it of like, oh, the chapter's ended. I'll put on, which then I'm like, what music do I listen to after this? Like I get into a whole
soothing.
like
Either that or like North metal.
Well, there is a song called Skull, Skal, by it sounds traditional. I don't know if it's actually traditional. Miracle of Sound is who I listen to.
Johns? Oh.
No, it's Miracle of Sound, but it's so Obsidian sounding, and it talks about feasting, and the whole idea of it is like these Viking feasts, and so I listened to that on like a loop today because I was like, not actually what like the meat of the chapter is, but also like
meat of the chapter is parts.
Meat of the chapter. Oh, yeah. Well, on that note, good segue into Crescent. What's on your t-shirt? Worthy.
We're worthy today.
We're worthy.
I thought it was very fitting.
Very.
I went for the front of our chapters with my honor remains.
I will say I switched to Worthy
I love
Rum.
that shirt.
Switched to Worthy Rum halfway through. Mostly inspired because I went, oh yeah, Worthy.
I had a red rhubarb Summersby for Lyria and Oakdale Scotch.
Yeah.
Best.
So Worthy is from howlerhollow.net.
Yeah, both mine and Summit's are.
Oh, that one is as well. Why did I not think it was?
That's why I raised it up.
Yeah, there you go. I am in my complex female character shirt that I have worn often. I am going to give a shout out. We don't normally give a shout out to who created this shirt, but it's Jordine. I will link below because it is all nerd stuff. This one is actually created by Sam Maggs, who is an author who is fantastic. He does collaborations. Jordine with V. Schwab has had collaborations. And Sam Maggs is who interviewed Pierce the first time I saw him for Morning Star. She was the interviewer. But they do a whole bunch of great stuff. Most of the Sam Maggs collection is around this mentality of the nerd girls and trying to claim back our space. So she's got, this one is unfortunately no longer available, but I looked it up and I unfortunately closed it, but the newest one that they made, I'm going to pull it up, and it is something along the lines of like, no, I don't know anything about video games. It makes a good joke about the fact that Sam Maggs writes for video games and people just assume that women don't know anything about that area. No, it's literally the t-shirt you can buy is I don't know anything about video games. But yeah, so that's where it's Jordan, E-N-E at the end. Clothing, take a look there. But yeah, that's where my complex female character shirt comes from because I've worn it quite a bit, so give them a shout out. We have our own shop, redbubble.com/shop/Fade to Obsidian. Just look up Fade to Obsidian on Redbubble. We'll find it. And we currently are holding the Expect Me competition. We know of at least 2 people who are both graphic designers who are submitting things. You have until the beginning of February for that. I think February 3rd.
Also, still waiting on a Pela 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 shirt.
Oh, yeah.
That I was supposed to make, have not.
Yeah, Shocking. Come on. Where is your post-it note of things that you have to do?
Here.
Yeah.
Not an artist.
That's fine. I'm not either, and the rest of the stuff is, well, no, we have Slink as well on there. But yeah, so if you are watching this, you can still get your designs in for Expect Me, and for that one we are saying that if we'll give you half the profit. So we don't make a ton on merch, like anything.
Yeah, we've made
on
like
merch.
$12 total, maybe.
So, but this might be the thing that makes us all millionaires. So,
Yeah.
design it.
When I got
there.
Design a dope shirt that everybody wants, and you'll get paid.
Perfect.
when I got to that line, I did think of you, Skipper.
I know. Thank you. I did not realize I blew "Expect Me" so out of the like out of proportion.
Out of proportion.
I just became.
I mean, you were a stan, like you, like it. Yeah,
I was like, this is the best thing ever, and then like it does not reappear until Lightbringer, and I don't know why. In my head, I was like, it's in every book. No, it's not. I just want it in every book.
It's in every series.
Yeah, sure. I did say in when I nearly got a tattoo, I almost broke my tattoo roll in Tulsa, and then at the last moment did not, and I was gonna get "Expect Me" written across my arm. Be great.
It would have been awesome.
Right? Maybe one day.
It's a shame Pierce has to die before you can get a tattoo of any of this stuff.
That's the exact rule. I don't get tattoos for anybody who's alive. So
you're going to be 80, and it's like, okay, finally I can get Red Rising tattoo.
Wait, are you going to say he's going to die at the age of 82? That's wow. He's not that much older than me.
I don't know. Sure. Why not?
Sure.
This just in, I guess.
Pierce dies at the age of 82. Let's not put that in the world. Pierce will live a long life into the late
Pierce
hundreds.
will.
He will be the first one to live to 130.
Yeah. He'll get blue veins in his eyes, cell rejuvenation.
I was gonna go on a whole thing about like, would you do that? But I feel like that's a whole other episode.
You'd be silly not to.
I have thoughts about it, but I feel like this is a different episode, not this one. But Summit, thank you so much for being here today, and please make sure you come back for the middle of Lightbringer to Red God, that awkward phase we're gonna have. It's gonna be our teenage years where we don't know what's happening.
Awkward phases. That's like where I thrive.
Right?
Yes.
We have discussed talking about just the red women, and I feel like you have brought up so many things with Harmony, Lyria, a few of the others that you might thrive there, but I don't want to put thoughts or ideas. Let us know. Let you as the listener, let us know if you want to join us one day. There is a Google Doc. I need to send it back out to people. A survey. There is a survey of, you can submit what you want to either see, or if you want to join us, send us some thoughts on that, because we've got probably about 1.5 years until Red God comes out. We gotta fill that time with something.
Yeah. It's like another 70 episodes.
Yeah. We're gonna do deep dive analysis like nobody's ever done. I can't wait to have the episode just on the 2 instances of Expect Me. That's where we're gonna get with this.
Expect me to blow this out of proportion.
The Skipper story.
Episode title right there.
All times. Yeah. So submit what you want to either join us for, or just what you want to hear, even if you don't want to come on. If you are in the Patreon, I'm going to call it out right now that you can submit your questions for everybody to answer for the survey. We'll be closing that up soon, and then everybody will be able to answer survey questions like we did back in Red God, Golden Sun, so that we can have an episode.
Red Rising, but yeah.
Sorry, what did I say?
Red God.
Red God. Guys,
everybody knows about Red God, but awesome. It's the reverse of Lightbringer.
Yeah. But yeah, submit those so that we can get everybody's opinions on what happened in that book, where that's going to be a whole episode. And then we're also going to send out for people to send us answers via voice text so that we can get some of your opinions and voices on here. That'll be the episode after all of this is done. But next week we are back with Hawking, who is possibly the only person to read the series more than Crescent. So, as we did last time, I'm just going to sit back and drink, and the two of them are going to do a deep dive into some clang, I believe, right? That's the... Yeah. Spoil just a little bit. Spoil
That's
just
the
a
thing
little
with
bit.
the stuff.
Some clang. All right. I think that's it. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us.
Yeah, it's been great.
Bye.
Bye.